How you doing? How you doing? How you doing, Chris?
Awesome.
Hi, Ryan. Good afternoon,
Robert?
sir.
Do what?
Good afternoon, sir.
Sir? I'm slightly dazed and confused by that word. You wanting something, Bob?
It's a circus.
What's in that Pepsi?
Kindergarten circus.
He said he's going to give like 2 to us or something. There's like... He only gave me 2.
So is this the right one?
That's the right one, yeah. And here's the little piece of paper.
Is your officer coming for swearing? You want me to shake
Where's the act? Yes.
people can walk plus you can have a chase to stay for you so you can call it.
Good for her. So it doesn't have to stay for the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah, he should be here in a minute.
Yeah, she was really nice. She thought she had the flu.
Yeah.
He's off shit.
Yeah.
Sherry's violation. I mean, unless she was after Debbie was swearing in if you want to just tell him. I mean, whatever you want to do. Yeah. Well, we should.
That's not him. What are we going to do? Give him 5. Oh, okay. Give him 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's going to be some swearing, all right. This is going to be fun, right? Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
No, we're holding hostage.
We all ready at 7?
We'll call tonight's Village of Holly meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Ms. Bigger, can we have roll call, please?
Alsop,
Here.
Kirkshank,
Here.
Heupel,
Here.
Shield,
Here.
Musgrave,
Here.
Rankin,
Here.
Perkins.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. I have 4 items I would like to strike from this week's agenda. That is item number 10, 11, 12, and 16. Those will be revisited at a later time.
And I like to put number 9 in that too.
9. Okay,
So just to be clear, none of these are moving down to no business?
that's correct.
Or new business, I'm sorry.
That's correct.
Okay.
So 9's being moved down?
9 is being stricken. 9, 10, 11, 12, and 16 are being stricken from the agenda.
What was being moved down to new business?
Nothing.
None?
Nothing.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Any other changes?
Make the motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Kirkshank, supported by Mr. Shield. Any discussion further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, actually, this needs to be a roll call. Sorry.
Heupel,
Yes.
Shield,
Yes.
Musgrave,
Yes.
Rankin,
Yes.
Alsop,
Yes.
Kirkshank.
Yes.
Okay. We have a wonderful presentation tonight, which will be the swearing-in ceremony of Officer Ryan Chase. Chief Story?
Good evening, Council. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time in allowing me to present my newest addition to the police department. His name is Ryan Chase. He is a recent graduate of the Macomb County Police Academy, and he worked for a time for the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. Now he's with me, and I have him here, and he is going to be we're going to put him through our FTO program, our field training program, as he's a little less longer in the tooth than most of the guys I parade up here in front of him. So, at this time I would like to introduce Ryan and present him as my newest guy.
I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office which I am about to enter
of the office which I am about to enter
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Welcome to the village of Holly, Officer Chase.
Welcome. Fantastic. I think what we'd like to do is take a little break right now, so you can meet with Officer Chase and mingle a little bit. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you bring cookies, Jerry?
He should. Oh.
State of the Holly community. Hi, how are you? Yes.
Not my first rodeo. Boom.
Oh, so you kind of right from home.
Jim would be done. He'd be done. Yeah, he is. Yep.
When you're all done.
Ryan, thank you. I really appreciate it.
A year ago. Trump's been in office a year. Oh, last November was. This November will be 2 years. Oh, yeah. No, because all it does is split the votes. And it ruins it. I don't know everybody. I don't know everybody.
Hey, is Ryan a full-time officer or is he part-time?
He's a part-time officer.
Okay.
We won't be here. I mean, legally.
Should be a requirement.
Maybe you can speak during these 4 minutes. I think he was appointed for a term. He didn't run. Perkins, like I said, this is his second year, and would be his second year. Where have you been? I guess. Gary's been up there too.
Larry going curly.
I bet. I bet.
Funny.
However you call me.
You need to. I didn't say that. Is everybody ready to continue? Okay, let's move on to public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. Do we have anyone for public comment? Mr. Love.
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. I see that I've been replaced on the Historic Commission. And I talked to the village president. He said he had nothing to do with the names on this piece of paper for the agenda. And he'd had enough and he's leaving. And he resigned. I haven't made enough of a contribution to the village. And I recognize that. I saved this building from being torn down. There's a storefront that Deb had one time that was a 1950 era drugstore, and the facade had dropped because the village building inspector had been the contractor and didn't do it properly. I fixed it all up and restored it. Here's the proposed historic district. The red dots are properties that I've owned in the district and have been updated, repaired. One of them right here is not in the district. It's right on the boundary. So when I saw this, I said, well, why don't we include that? It's one of the two Victorian brick homes in Holly. And when I bought it, it had been vacant for several years, and the neighbor was cutting the lawn in front of the building. It had been two-family, and it's a beautiful building, and I've painted it twice. Some people haven't even painted their house once. And then I worked on this Imagine project, and the big thing that was desired by the community was not the bike lane. It was to fix up Saginaw. And one of the properties on Saginaw is the car wash that's been owned by the village for over a year, and it needs a for sale sign up, and it needs something done to make it a contribution. And if you put a for sale sign on, that's the first step. You don't sit on it for a year. And that's what the management has done in your community. That's the first priority is Saginaw Street, and nothing has been done on that. And you need to step up to some responsibility on some of these things. So I just wanted to share that. And you don't need to send me a thank you note for being replaced in the Historic Commission. You can send me my name tag, though. I'll keep that. I tried to do something to set a budget up to put some signs there to publicize what we have and publicize the assets that we have. The other asset that we have, we're the heart of the parks, and we should be promoting that. To launch a canoe down by the waterworks, there's only one place to launch them. There should be several spots there. We own both sides of the road property, and we could have some great launches and publicize that asset and integrate it with the state parks that are here and make this a real spot to come and enjoy the ambiance of Holly. And that's the things that should be done, but I'm not going to be working on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. I'm Margaret Hayhall, and I have another meeting, I'm sorry, library board tonight, but I'd like you to consider reappointing me to the Planning Commission. I have 25 plus years on the Planning Commission, and I had no plans whatsoever to resign. There was some misunderstanding, and I would love to continue working on our Planning Commission and serving my community.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Engelberg.
Good evening. I would like to thank the 4-member majority of the council who voted to approve the resolution to appoint me to planning. Unfortunately, it appears your votes did not matter, and my words tonight are not totally directed at you. What should have happened was a simple swear-in that would have allowed me to be seated at the January planning meeting. Over the last month, I have tried multiple times to get sworn in, but was stonewalled by the village. The reason I was given was that out of courtesy, the village president should notify the person I was replacing. I thought this was a reasonable request, so I agreed. Mr. Walker assured me that once this was done, I would be sworn in and we could move forward. After a couple of weeks of waiting, President Perkins called me on January 24th, telling me things were handled, that the person who was being replaced had been notified, and directed me to go to the village and get sworn in. I contacted the village to arrange a time to do so, and again was stonewalled. The next day, President Perkins asked if I had been sworn in. I had explained that still there was a refusal to move things forward. I have heard phrases like protocol, common courtesy, and procedure from village management and council members who voted against the appointment because the person I was replacing did not want to leave when her term expired. The village charter, the only rules that matter in the eyes of the courts, read as follows. Appointments shall be made by the village president with the advice and consent of the village council, the vote that took place. Removal from office shall be for cause upon recommendation of the village president, not other members of this council. It does not require a president to reappoint anyone. It does not require a president to notify a person who has been replaced. It does not require the new appointee to wait to be sworn in until notification to the former member is made. It does not say the charter rules only apply to those sworn in, and that stall tactics can be used to displace someone duly appointed by resolution so that members of council who voted against the appointment can attempt to change the outcome with a reconsideration. It does not state that a tax-paying resident expressing interest in serving should first be subjected to a tax and admissions of Open Meeting Act violation by a member of this council on social media who by doing so violated the village code of conduct for elected and appointed officials. Nobody in their right mind with ethics or integrity would seek appointment to this village in any capacity after this fiasco and abuse of power. Speaking of which, I thought the administration of this village worked for the council and carried out resolutions of the council, regardless of how close the vote was. Despite all of this, until tonight, I've kept quiet. I spoke with the village president, village manager, and the township supervisor. I did exactly what would be expected of me as far as working through the proper channels. I said nothing on social media. I kept telling myself to be patient, that the law was clear, that the village would do the right thing, and that personal agendas and vendettas would not play into this. Apparently, I was wrong, and the people who told me that I was a fool to get back involved with the village were right. Going forward, village residents should demand an end to the corrupt culture that allows members of the village government to commit misconduct and make up rules as they go along when it suits them, thereby putting the village at risk of public embarrassment and costly lawsuits. You have a charter. Follow the dang thing. So in closing, I am officially withdrawing myself from consideration for the Planning Commission. You can reappoint whoever you want. The village should be thankful I will not let that come to a vote on my behalf. If it had and the resolution had been reversed, a well-known attorney was prepared on Thursday morning to file lawsuits against the village council and administration with a special naming of Councilman Cruikshank for Open Meeting Act violations as well as obstruction and violations of the village charter due to refusal to swear me in.
Mr.
This
Engelberg,
would have
your
gone
time is
through
up.
and did have merit.
Your time is up,
However,
sir.
I do not want to burden the village
Mr. Engelberg,
residents.
your time is
no,
up.
it is not. I have 15
Yes, it
more
is.
seconds. You're going to give me my 15 seconds, and then I'm going to leave. I started the clock when I sat down or stood up here.
And so did I.
Well, nice
Just
try.
wasted 15 of your seconds.
Well, do you want to end up in a lawsuit? That's
Please
not really
don't
what I'd
start
like to
this.
have happen.
Please don't start this.
Well, let me have my say.
15 seconds.
Fine. I don't want to burden the residents of this village with yet another lawsuit. So I'm going to walk away with my integrity and the hope that one day true and honest government will come to this village. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engelberg. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, moving on. Public hearing for the road project funding options. I'll need a motion to enter into public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cruikshank, supported by, is that you, Chris, or?
Yes, it was.
Okay, this will be the public comment on the road bonding for us. Mr. Walker?
Yeah, so just by way of brief introduction, and not to support or endorse any type of future project that the community may be considering, but just for information purposes, the council and administration have been studying for several months now, well over a year as a matter of fact, the condition of the streets within the village. Really, if you drive down almost any street in the village, they're in great state of disrepair. Now, Holly is no different than most other communities. If you go through them, you have the same situation. And so a lot of communities are studying the same issue. In fact, I met within the last 2 weeks with the managers from Fenton and the city of Linden, who are also looking at this exact same problem in their communities. So I have at the back of the room and the front of the room some road ratings by diagram, which were prepared by Road Professional Services, who provide engineering services for the village. They show the conditions of the road. And so I invite anybody, if you'd like to take a look at those before you leave tonight, by all means do that. If for some reason you don't have an opportunity to do that, they are at the village office, and you can come look at them at any time, no appointment needed. Just come in during regular business hours, and somebody will assist you in getting access to those maps. So really the purpose for tonight is to allow public comment on the conditions of the road, and really to try and get more of a feel of what the community would like for the council to do. And really the easy answer is to say fix them. The hard answer is to say where do you get the money to do that? And so the village council has had a couple of meetings with representatives from Road Professional Services. We've also had a meeting with a financial advisor, Benzinski and Company, who has assisted the village in the past with financing of different projects. And so they spoke in the January meeting about one of the options that the village would have would be to put a ballot question on the November election or the August election, whichever the council chose, for the community to consider whether they wanted to approach the road problem in that manner. And so we know that it's not just a few $1,000s. The village has $200,000 to $400,000 that we dedicate annually to road repairs, but it's just road repairs. In order to do some real reconstruction and work on the roads, it's a several $million-dollar project. Road Professional Services estimates that the disrepair of the village streets right now is estimated at $15 million. So we know that that's not something that we can just take out of the general fund. Tackling it with $200,000 to $400,000 is not adequate to do that, and so we look for other solutions. And so really, I think that's a brief explanation of why we're here. I think the council is just looking for comment from the public and some more input.
Any public comment? Yes, Mr. Love.
I was wondering what this code was on here. It's got different colors. It doesn't explain what the colors are. It just has numbers. I don't know how that works.
Brian, you want to take that?
Road Professional Service used the PACER rating system, which is a pavement management system that is used by Michigan Tech. It was developed by engineers with different colors.
In other words, what's a 10 or what's a 1?
The 10 is the best you can get, and that's a brand new road. As soon as the road is 1 year
Pacer rating, there's a software system called Roadside that Michigan Tech provides free to municipalities. We're right on the edge of using that because of our size and stuff like that. It was designed mainly for small communities. But Row uses the same thing. You have to be Pacer trained through Michigan Tech. Those numbers give you an idea. They have different criteria.
Range hall is kind of red.
Yes.
So they have the responsibility.
Yes, Grange Hall, east and west of the village, east and west running through the village is all county maintained, and North High Road, north of Grange Hall is also county maintained, and Cliff Road is county maintained.
So they're not doing too well.
Well, if you were to put the whole county map up there, you would see that it's probably got a lot of red and orange countywide, but we're worrying about how right now.
So they're off the list.
Okay, any further public comment? Yes, Mr. Smith. Yes, please. State your name and address.
Tim Smith, 14525 North Holly Road. I just saw on the news this week that our president's going to shovel most of the money needed for road repairs right back on the local establishment, states, et cetera, et cetera. $50 million is a lot of money. And this has been coming for a long time. Good luck with your challenge on this one, because finding the finances for that over a period of, it's going to be decades. It's going to be continual. I don't see any other way. Just my experience in construction is once you start doing road projects, you've got to put them on a rotating, they get worked on. They've got to. Maybe every 10 years, whatever, this whole plan, it's going to be a bigger plan than just this small section, I think. The introductory, whatever Jerry's talking about, of only doing $5 million or $10 million. It's going to be some work from the community to try and get this passed and get any kind of support from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Engelberg.
I will be brief. I don't have much of a voice left. Just so you guys are aware, and I have sent pictures to Jerry and I think to Chris as well, the repairs that were done on Coggeshall Street that are already crumbling. And not in the middle of the road where I thought they might be because of the truck traffic, but right along the edges of the road where it meets the cement curb. You're starting to get spider cracks and crumbling, and that's only going to spread. And that was done, in July of last year. I'm hoping you guys got some kind of a warranty or some kind of guarantee, because I know it said, we were told, I think, that it was supposed to last 8 to 10 years, but if it's already crumbling after 6 months, it's not looking good. So, that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Need a motion to come out of public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to old business, waterworks update.
Good evening, everybody. George and I have had 2 meetings.
Can you state your name for the record,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, Bob Hoffman, volunteer. George and I have had 2 meetings at the Holly Hotel. The first one was on January 23rd with Ron Campbell and Joe Frost from Oakland County to evolve into this plan we're doing for the waterworks. And at that meeting, we decided we should have another meeting, which was held on Monday, February 5th, and we should invite all those people that will be instrumental in making this thing work. A couple people weren't able to make it, but I do want to personally thank Chris Rankin, Jerry Walker, Katie Hughes, Karen Winchester, of course Ron Campbell and Joe Frost are here from Oakland County again, Harvey Sorensen, of course George Cullis, Amy Folks, Steve McGee was there, and I thank him for the time and the input. Greg Miller from Kettering University, and Brian Clausen was there. Thank you very much, and Tony Engelberg. Thank you for your time, everybody. I think it was a very worthwhile meeting. There was a lot of good input, and I will let George tell you the synopsis, I guess, of that meeting, and I thank you again for your continued support.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
George Cullis, 601 East Maple Street. The purpose of that meeting was to bring the people together that are involved in this project or will be involved in this project going forward. Gave people like Mr. Rankin an opportunity to ask some questions. Unfortunately, Dr. Henthorn was not able to make that meeting from University of Michigan, but as Bob said, Greg Miller from Kettering was there. Joe Frost and Ron Campbell are leading the design for both the park and the concept and putting the historic preservation. Greg Miller talked about the programs that the colleges wanted to do. One of them was a business program with Dr. Smith, creating a business plan for the project going forward. And then he spoke a little bit about the historical preservation side of the plan, which was what Dr. Henthorn was supposed to speak of. And that's the University of Michigan going forward. So those meetings were had at the county. They're working on the plan side of that. And we've got another meeting that we're in the process of trying to set up for the Dr. Henthorn from the other one. So as soon as we get that one together, he had texted us while we were there and said he was running late, and unfortunately he didn't show up until we were all gone. So he was really running late. So that's what we've got at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
See you next month. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item number 1, consideration of the acceptance of the resignation of Jim Perkins as village president. You have before you in your packet, and I'll read it. For the past 7 months, I have been so engaged with my father-in-law's illness that I have not been able to meet my duties as village president. Now that he has passed, I still have a great deal of things that need to be dealt with. The citizens need to have someone who can be engaged for them. For this reason, I am stepping aside from my position as president. I want to thank you for everything. You and the rest of the staff have been great. The village will be in good hands with Debbie at the helm. Thank you again for everything. This is effective as of today. And this is dated Monday, February 12, 2018 at 12:28 p.m. We need a motion to accept Mr. Perkins' resignation.
Support.
So moved.
Or so moved. I keep wanting to do that.
Okay. Who's making the motion, you or you?
You can take it.
Okay.
I'll support.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Shields, supported by Mr. Cruikshank. Any discussion?
I don't think there is any, other than thanks to Jim for his service that he's done so far.
Okay. Okay. We don't need roll call for this, do we? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Number 2, consideration of the rescinding of Resolution 2018-001 appointing Tony Engelberg to the Planning Commission based on his request to withdraw. We shall need a motion on this as well.
Yeah, that will require a roll call also.
Okay. Roll call, please. Well, we need a motion first. Wouldn't that help?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cruikshank,
Support.
supported by Mr. Rankin. Roll call, please.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Hypo.
No.
Shield.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
No.
What was the tally?
42.
4-2, okay. Motion carries. Okay, item number 3, consideration of resolution 2018-010, confirming the reappointment of Margaret Heshall to the Village of Holly Planning Commission. Let's do a roll call on this. After a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion on the floor by Mr. Cruikshank,
Support.
supported by Mr. Shield. Roll call now, please.
Hypo.
No.
Shield.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
No.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, item number 4, consideration of ordinance 451 to amend sections 130.02A, 130.02C, and 130.99B2 of Chapter 130 of Title 13 of the Code of Ordinances concerning the possession and use of alcoholic liquor by minors and penalties for violations thereof.
I'll speak to that.
Thank you.
We need this in essence. The state law regarding MIP, minor in possession, has changed. There are several changes in the law, and which of it decriminalizes the initial first and second act. So with that being said, we have to have that ordinance on books in order for the courts to charge properly. It's basically a housekeeping issue, but although we do always mirror law, we do have to change the code from time to time when these are affected like this, especially in a decriminalization sense.
Okay. Council? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the ordinance 451 to amend section 130.02A, 130.02C, and 130.99B, subsection 2, chapter 130 of Title 13 of the Code of Ordinances concerning possession of the use of alcoholic liquor by minors and penalties for violations thereof.
Support.
Okay, we have a support by Mrs. Heupel.
Need a breather.
Yeah, no doubt. Resolution? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 5, budget study session, Police Department and Fire Department.
Yes, thank you. And this budget study session is on a regular council meeting night as council changed the kind of procedure that we do every month, where the first meeting of each month is used for a study session. And so we thought that we would include the budgets for the various departments in these budget study sessions, because we think that it gives better access to the public as we talk about how the village spends the funds that are received each year. And so tonight is the police and the fire department. At the next budget, you got me started on that. The next budget study session will be with the DPW and the wastewater treatment plant. The following will be general government, and just a wrap up of all our budget study sessions. But really what this will encompass is then a detail or an explanation for all of the department budgets during public meeting where most people can't attend. Now, the meetings that we held in previous years, they were open to the general public too. Usually, though, they were only attended by Miss Lacey and maybe 1 or 2 other people. And so we're happy to be able to lay these budgets out in front of a broader audience. And also, since we're doing the video broadcasting of our meetings, we think that will even have more effect. And during this budget study session, once the department heads talk about what they're doing in their department, obviously council has the option of asking questions or making suggestions, but also based upon council approval. But I think it would be proper if anybody in the public would have comment or a question of why money is spent in a certain manner, that would be appropriate also. So we're happy to lay these out. Chief Story will present first on the police department, and then Chief McGee will follow with the fire department. So, and you have your budgets enclosed in your packet. So just keep in mind as the chiefs are talking that these are draft budgets. You obviously don't approve these budgets until June when you normally would. So these budgets may change a few $1,000s up or down depending upon the amount of revenue that is actually received by the village or projected to be received, or if any large expenses were to become known to the police chief or fire chief that they don't know about at this time.
Good evening again. So, submitted my budget proposal. Again, as Mr. Walker pointed out, this is just the initial salvo. What I'm looking at in my department is I don't have any major plans for right now until we know exactly what we're talking about with revenues and that. But as it stands, about the major expenditure that I'm looking at is a new vehicle. We have our fleet. We have the 3 newer vehicles that are all 2016s. The 3 of them that are newer 2016s, but they were purchased in 2015. So we're starting to pile the mileage on up those. And we have a couple of other ones that are still in service on the road, a Charger and a Durango, last generation. So the proposal for that is to purchase another patrol car, to get our fleet back up with the 2 failing ones, to take the Durango out of service and turn that into an administrative car, and that would leave free the one that that I use for administration right now with 111,000 miles on it. I don't know if some of you have been in it before or not, but I don't think I'd get an argument from you. So we just are going to take care of that. Now, we did receive some additional help in our budget in some areas as far as the county dispatch contract. It went down with the loss of paying for Groveland's fire runs. Now, that was figured into a savings. The rest of it, the rest of my budget is pretty much status quo with the increases that you would expect in contractual areas and some other areas that need to be addressed. I did ask for some increases in equipment and training in particular. I feel I need that. The more reliance I have on part-time officers, the greater my need for training is, and then the training necessitates backfill. So I've tried to plan that out as best I can. As it stands, last year I put out 7,200 hours of part-time patrol hours, and my unfortunate circumstance in my last budget was I overestimated. I had a couple of people that I was going to bring in, trained to put on the roads. I would fill myself up contractually, but both of those individuals accepted full-time jobs elsewhere. So kind of got caught, with my shorts down a little bit on that one. As you can see, probably by looking over the budget, I'm a little light there, but it will pick up. With my hours, I have lags in my budget. Lags in my year for meeting of part-time officers. But aside from that, some additional equipment I want to finish out. Purchasing new AEDs. I have 3 that I purchased last year. I have a need to have at least 2 more, and I think I'm going to be able to pull the money out of this year's budget to at least get one of them, and possibly, which goes into my next need, a taser. But getting back to the AEDs, one of them is going to be very serviceable. I've already spoken to Mr. Clausen about that. I'm going to take that AED. They don't have one at the DPW facility, and I would surely just get that right over there. It's fully, it's good operationally, and it's just a little, it's a couple of model years off, but it's still very serviceable. In fact, last year when I had Sergeant Simpson in here for a life-saving award, it was that AED that was used. So it still works, and we're good to go on that. I have a need for tasers. Mine are the first generation tasers that we had when I first came in here in 2006. They're still serviceable. I had one replaced last year from a grant with Allstate Insurance. It's becoming increasingly hard to find parts for them and to get them fixed. It costs more to get them fixed than it does new. And so in that vein, like I said, most of my increases have to do with equipment and training, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I would like to have another car, or if that's at all possible, but most likely not. The Charger that I would leave on the road would still be serviceable, I believe, for another 2 years. That being said, I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have about what's in my budget.
Chief, I have a couple. On your tasers, I've been told there's 2 different types. One where it just hits the person, one where EMS has to actually remove the points. Is that true?
With the taser barbs and stuff like that, I mean, we're trained how to remove them.
Okay.
The barbs are really no different. The cartridges are really no different. It's the apparatus itself. Cartridges are still interchangeable. It's just the the gun itself, not the ammunition.
Okay. But that is the type that you use, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all barbed.
Okay. And the Durango, what year did you say that was?
1850. It is a 2007. It has low mileage.
It does?
Yes. Although,
Well, what's low mileage
What
on
it-
a
yeah, what-
police car is still.
well, the vehicle in and of itself was never even set up for pursuit. It's not a pursuit-rated vehicle. I actually talked my initial chief when I hired in here into having it as a utility vehicle. We call it the Beast, and we call it that for a reason. It's hardcore in that regard. You just don't want to drive really, really fast, and it's kind of top-heavy.
And so, as the chief said, what would happen is, right now it's used on limited patrol purposes. You might have seen it around the village. With the rotation that he plans on putting into place, is it would be taken off patrol purposes and then placed into administration and just basically to and from, but not used for patrol.
Does that one have an in-car camera set up now?
Yes.
And that can transfer obviously to
Yes,
the vehicle?
all my in-car cameras will be are moved in and out. It would have anything that I need in a new car would be removed from that car, except for the MDC that's currently in it. That also, in my budget too for replacement under in a different line item. As it stands, I have 2 old MDCs left. They've all been replaced with the Oakland County Columbus contracts and that we can use essentially as a Dell Tough book. It has to be, it's about $7,300 less than the old style of MDC apparatus. We've had them, we're integrating them in, and they've been working just fine. They're actually very, very nice to have. You can take them out if you need to and run them inside and complete a report if you needed to.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. As it stands right now, well, the total, the subtotal for it is right now is at about 1.38, right around there. But I have additional items in my budget that come into play. That includes the Oakland County dispatch contract and the contract for my clericals, day-to-day operation of the station, separated into 3. I was just at this time just dealing with the 300 portion of the budget. Well, it is $111,000 at the end of the term. It goes down to, it starts at about 94, 95, but when you add in the additional cost for the fire department and that, for their medical runs and that, there's a different charge for it. It's not simple dispatch. Approximately, yes. At the end, I'm sorry, we did prepare a 2-year budget. The county budget is for the county contract is a 3-year contract. So that'll project out to 2021 fiscal year. Each year it'll be No, it'll go up. It'll go up 3%. 3% each year for the police department, 4% each year for the fire department.
So as Chief McGee makes his way to the podium, you'll see as he's presenting his budget, there's actually a salary line for a full-time employee. I asked him to put that in there for council's consideration. Chief McGee has provided fire administration to the Village of Holly for a number of years now. And we did that through an administrative contract with Groveland Township. Our cost for those services was $74,000. Plus, per that contract, we also had to pick up additional dispatch fees for the Groveland Township Fire Department, just as part of the financial remuneration for fire administration to be provided to the village. With the event of Chief McGee retiring from Groveland Township at the end of this fiscal year in May or June, makes him available for us to hire him full-time. And really, when we look at transferring that $74,000 that we would have paid to Groveland for fire administration, and then the additional cost savings, not having to pay their dispatch, it makes sense for us to bring the chief over here full-time. If we did not do that, we would have to go out and hire another fire chief. And not only, in my opinion, would you not be able to do it cheaper, but you would lose the expertise that Chief McGee has demonstrated in his dedication to the village over a number of years. And additionally, Chief McGee provides another service in that he is the village's building official. The Village of Holly is required to have a building official to oversee our building department and operations within the village. So really, by bringing the chief on full-time in Holly, we fill both those slots. I think we do it fiscally responsible, and we maintain the expertise. So the cost of his salary and benefits, I split in the budget, half in the fire department, half in the building department, so that each department is paying their fair share of his costs. And then additionally, we built a vehicle into the budget. You'll see as he goes through his budget that even adding that salary cost plus a vehicle cost, we're still less than $5,000 increase to add that position. To go along with that position also, I should say we built into the budget increasing hours for Jeremy Watson, who is our current code enforcement and building inspector, different than building official. And so we built in additional hours into the fire department as fire marshal activities. And the chief can talk a little bit about the importance of a fire marshal and the necessity of that position. So those are really the only changes, but I didn't want the chief to have to tell you that he built himself into the budget on his own. He did that at my direction.
Thanks, you did great. No, I've had a great time. It's actually been 10 years in July that we've been doing this. So it's worked very well, and we couldn't be happier. We actually, 10 years ago, dropped the budget over about $130,000. And it's crept up little by little, but again, we went through that 2008, 2009 time. And we have, as you can tell, have a pretty tight budget. And Mr. Love's going to ask. So this year's budget is $341,000 and change. The proposed budget for next year would be $345,900, so about $4,000 more next year. And then you can see projecting out 2 years, which the village manager really wanted us to push it out, it goes down $25,000. It's loaded next year, would be loaded next year with the car expense, and then that wouldn't be there the following year. So like the police department, we're trying to watch our pennies. So basically what we have here is, we have 21 part-paid people. The way we operate is every day of the week, 365 days a year, we have a person on duty at the station. And so that person is there from 7 in the morning till 5 at night in the afternoon. And that allows us to respond to emergencies. And then at 5 o'clock is when most the residents come back into town. So then we can draw from our volunteer or part-paid people. So that's kind of how we've worked the system, and it's worked very well. I did it in Groveland for a long time, still do. North Oakland does it that way. Springfield does it that way. Most departments like ours do it that way. So that's the top item, is we call that shift. Duty pay is when people come back on calls, and that's kind of a variable, because if we have an ice storm or a big fire or something like that, and we're out for multiple hours, that's where that number grows. Just to give you kind of an idea, most of our, if you average what our personnel cost is, it's around $12 or $13 an hour. So these men and women are not doing it for the money. They get up in the middle of the night and respond to all of us, and really it's not, the dollars are really just to reimburse them for fuel and those kind of things. The full-time wages are what Jerry had talked about. Training wages are like the police department. We train between 6 and 9 times a month, just because we do need to be ready and for everything. Anything that can go wrong, we have to, we're the ones between us that are called. So we also do a lot of that. Fire marshal, we talked, Jerry brought that up a little bit. And with the, before I was here, there were no fire inspections done. And so that hurts us in a couple ways. First, we have fires. This downtown is as valuable to me as really anybody in this room. That's key to me, is keeping that. And so we had a fire marshal before Jeremy, and what we did is we started a program where they would go through each business, and we do it still every year. And it's, our goal is not to go in there and give tickets and close them down. It's just, the first year actually was, if they had a gas can next to the furnace, say, please don't do that, and make them aware. But in our entire history, we have not had fire inspections before we came here. And now it's annually, and people expect it. And we're kind of getting more and more saying, boy, you really need to put lights in those exit signs. And, you know, the door needs to swing the other way and things like that. And can't have extension cords everywhere. So our goal, while sometimes feels mean, is to make sure that we can preserve our village and the downtown. So that's what those inspections are for, and we really need to continue it. The good part of that is that's helped us reduce our ISO rating. And you've heard me talk, and more than talk, probably whine about ISO, because it's a headache. And all the departments have an ISO-like oversight, and but ours is, it really comes back to the residents and the business owners in dollars saved. If we do good, their insurance goes down. So and we're low right now, and we just were evaluated. We don't know the result, but we really feel like it's going to be a good number, and that may reduce it even more. And those inspections are huge, because the loss could be avoided and abated, and we train on all these different fire, all these different buildings as if they were on fire. That's part of our training. So, and we've trained on Ryan's house, and we catch it on fire, and everybody knows. We have it's called fire simulations, so people can see how we can burn it up on a computer, and then where would people park, what would they do, and how would we approach that. So it's good practice. We don't have to really burn his house. But we get that.
I was going to ask when my replacement house is.
So, but we do a lot of that, and so, but those kind of things, the training, the inspections, are key to keeping that ISO level down. So Jeremy really is a key part of the budget. Really, everything else is kind of like Mike's. It's really just operating supplies, straight, fuel and different things. The only other real big changes would be the reduction that Jerry talked about on the first page under contractual. This year, that would go from 124.5 down to 57, because we wouldn't be paying Groveland for that piece. The other thing that a lot of people don't really understand is in equipment, we have $20,000. We really put $20,000 in there every year. And we write a lot of grants, and thank you to Mrs. Heifel. She helps us a lot with that. And so these are matching grants. And so last year, as an example, we got all new air packs, $160,000 worth of air packs, and it cost us 5%. So about $9,000 we had to pay out of our pocket. But we have all brand new air packs. So we wouldn't be able to pay for something like that. I mean, it would just be unheard of. It's, you know, but with these grants, it really helps. So we wrote another grant, and so that is kind of a catch if we get a grant. There's been years we haven't, and then that money just rolls over. All of us, all the department heads really try, and I'm sure, I know I have never been over budget, and I think that goes across the board. And so that's one area. And then if we do get a grant, like we're in for this year, and we have an extra $8,000 or whatever, then we can buy those necessary hoses and tools that we actually do need out of that balance. So that's people always ask, what equipment are you going to buy with that? It kind of depends. We wait to the end of our fiscal year to see if we're successful with the grant, and then we base it on that going forward. Again, the vehicle is in there, but it's not the following year, so that, again, is why there's the big reduction. So those are really the biggest differences, I guess. All the rest of it is office supplies, and postage and fuel kind of things, and uniforms. You'll see some things actually went down a little bit. Uniforms went from 4,000 down to 3,000. We all, police, fire, all of us feel that it's important to look professional when we, when we're responding to somebody's home or business, and so that's what that is. We like our people to dress the part and act the part. So, but that actually went down because we didn't spend it last year. But I don't know if you have any questions, but that's really kind of the...
How is it that there's budgeted zero for vehicle fuel and some of these other that are zero?
That's in a couple places, and the first time I went through, I said, oh no. But if you go up on the first page, under 101-335-731-001, that there's $5,000 in fuel there. So it's in two places, and that there's a couple of those items. Good catch. I did the same thing.
Can I say while you're finishing looking up at his budget, one thing in relation to bringing him on full-time, if council does ultimately approve that in the final budget, is that he will be here 40 hours a week to not only supervise but to mentor the department as well as meet with the residents. And so right now he's here a lot, but it's more as needed or when events arise. So we look forward to having that time. And also with the increased hours that he'll be putting here, Chief McGee and I have talked several times on the need for some improvement in fire alarming throughout the community, but particularly in the downtown. We've talked about sprinklers or wet systems, to protect the historic buildings downtown. But really that probably is cost prohibitive. But another area that we're going to look into is alarming those buildings and tying them all together. And that'll be a voluntary program that will work with the business owners. But with the time that he'll be here, not only will we be able to research that, but we'll also be able to research grants and some funding to help. And really, I think it's in everybody's best interest, as the chief already stated, that we protect our resources that we have. So every bit of Holly is important. The historic downtown really is the heart of Holly, but the entire community is important. But we know that there's a definite need in that downtown area just with the age of the buildings.
Any questions for Chief?
Sure.
Fire and police, what about that in future combination?
We've talked about that before. There are, I think Mike could tell me, 4 or 5 communities in Oakland County that do that. They turn out to be, really are one or the other. It's tough to do. The good thing with our police department is they respond with us, and they do CPR. When you've seen them up there getting awards for all the different things they've done, and they'll drag posts, as will the DPW. So really, it's a team, and we have a couple ideas to even spread it out further if there's a big incident. And we have some, at least one, Willie, was on the fire department. We have another guy on the DPW that is on the fire department. So there's some knowledge.
Do they have the impacts in the police cars?
Not in the police cars, no.
What about combining with Holly Township?
Well, we talked about that too, and it's more expensive at this point to do that. But we have researched that, and it may be an option down the road. And Groveland's even considering that right now, as I am. But so I think it's going to take more people to do it. It's hard when you have, and I don't want to say a skimpy budget, but this is a very light budget. When if you consolidate, you still have to keep the lights on. So if it's $100 for the Village of Holly, it's going to be $100 for whoever else does it. So that's what makes it difficult, and that's why really I'm a wash. It's just really trading money because there is an expense.
Yep. Can I say as far as shared services though? So at this time and for the past several years, Groveland Township has provided advanced life support ambulance service to the village. The chief is currently in discussions with NACFA to see if they're interested in providing that same service. So I think that is a step, another step in towards shared services and just a working relationship with NACFA.
Okay, thank you, Chief McGee.
You bet.
Okay, moving on to reports. Mr. Walker?
So previously during the public hearing, I mentioned briefly that I had met with the managers from Linden and the city of Fenton regarding roads. As I said, they are facing the exact same problems that we have. Depending upon the size of their community, Fenton's need obviously is much larger than our need, but their tax base is much larger, so everything is quite relative. But the fact is they all need the same thing. So we are going to continue to meet together to discuss different funding options or approaches that each individual community is going to have, and hopefully we can bring those together. And we really hope, whatever the direction that our councils bring out, that we can deliver the message to the community that this is not just a singular problem with a singular community. It's a problem that in this entire state really that needs to be addressed in some manner. So we'll be doing that. On another note, I had the opportunity yesterday to report in front of the Holly Area Schools School Board to talk about the Carl Richter Community Center and the joint operation that is occurring there. And of course that is another shared service operation with the Holly Township Parks and Recreation, the Holly Area Schools, and the village. So in that, the Holly Area Schools, they obviously provide the facility, and then we provide some small amount of remuneration through rent that comes through that. And so as we talked last night with the school board, we talked about the number of people who actually went through the building. So in 2017, just over 23,000 people used the Carl Richter Community Center just through the community center. Additional to that, there were more people that used the building through Holly Area School programs. So we know that number is much higher. Now, in knowing that, in fact, the council is meeting separately with the advisory board for the Carl Richter Community Center and looking at ways to even enhance that service more. And we know that we have a hidden gem in the auditorium and certainly a resource that can be used even more. So we look forward to doing that. Other than that, it's been a tough winter. There's been lots of snow, as all of you know. And so, we struggle with keeping not only our roads and sidewalks clear that the village is responsible for. And I think Director Clausen's crew does a great job. And so they do that. I would just encourage everybody to just remember to keep up on your property. One battle that the DPW fights is people plowing snow or snow blowing snow into the roads after they're cleared, which creates a problem. But I would also just like to remind people that when you're out there doing your driveway, if you have it in you, look around and see if there's somebody in need that can use your help. So there's lots of people around. People don't always ask for help, but they're out there. And I know we're a very good community about doing that, but it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Gildner is excused. Ms. Bigger.
I only have one thing to say. We finally got a loaner smart bus today.
Yay!
And thank you, Brian, for going to pick it up.
Wonderful. And boards and commissions. Dave?
For planning, we did the site approval for, I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's like Village Court Plaza, I believe. It's the opposite of where the Villagers Plaza is. In the open lot that's there, they presented plans, and so there's a few things that were missing off of the plans, but nothing that was a deal breaker. So we gave them the preliminary approval, and they I'm not sure when they're going to actually break ground, but it's a gorgeous looking building on the plans.
What is it going to be?
It's going to be a mirror of the current plaza, so you know, just basically on the opposite side in an L shape, opposite of what Villagers is. And so when you pull in, it'll be like a shared parking lot between the current place and then the new plaza.
Do we know what shops are going in?
No, they said they have not approached anybody yet until the plans are approved. So, but they, you know, indicated it'd be similar, same things: doctors or dentists, light retail. You know, I'm not sure about another restaurant or not, but but definitely kind of mirroring what's there now.
Wonderful. Yep. Thank you. Ms. Heupel.
For a community center, Jerry touched on that. We did meet with the school, very optimistic, and they were willing to help in any way with the liaison on the board. And we did have a meeting, the advisory board had a meeting yesterday in which we discussed renewing and reviewing our past bylaws and business plans, the job description for the director, and just basically just seeing if the original plan suits our future needs and how to progress from there. Our next meeting is February 27th at 5:30, right before the council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Shield.
The HIA has not met, and then same with historic. We haven't. The last historic was canceled.
Okay. All right. Mr. Rankin, Parks.
We had our meeting Wednesday. We talked about the Kaboom organization has kind of gone on a hiatus. Kaboom is was the reason that we began doing our community play day. So even though the Kaboom organization won't be supporting that, we're still gonna continue with the community play day on Holly Day. So we'll still have that going on for us. We talked about our budget for this year, things we wanted to include, some capital projects that we wanted to do, some signage for the Shiawassee, maybe some reconfiguration of the parking lot at the Waterworks Park. And the Shiawassee National River Coalition has an annual event that they call Riverfest, and they do it 2 years in communities along the Shiawassee, and they approached, well, when I was at their meeting last month, they mentioned that Holly is going to be their choice for 2019 and 2020. So we've got some things that we'll need to organize and coordinate with the National River Coalition in order to host Riverfest next year.
It does look like a pretty awesome event, because I was looking at their current this year. It's like like anything across the board. It's a big, you know, celebration.
It's a big deal. They talk. They've said that they have between 4,000 and 6,000 visitors that come through on Riverfest weekend.
Wow.
So it'll be a big deal. Yeah. So we're gonna have to find some place to coordinate parking and maybe a shuttle.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Alsop, zoning.
We had a zoning board meeting for the state bank sign. Mr. Walker was there with us, and we denied the sign. It was too big. We're going to come back to the drawing board.
All right. Anything else? Anything else? Mr. Alsop?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh. Finance has not met. Personnel has not met. Nothing there. Council comments. Mr. Cruikshank?
The only thing I had is just elaborating on the KRCC meeting last night. We really encouraged them to try and get a budget submitted for this year so that we could put it in and consider it and work through it. One of the things was, advertising. So they talked about websites, getting a specific separate website off of the village one, and then generic flyers kind of for the rental facilities, and then also flyers for upcoming events and stuff too. So we super encouraged that one. There was a question on Facebook that came up over the past couple of days with fire hydrants and clearing the snow around them. Is there any way we can get some clarification? Because we heard that the DPW takes care of it, or the property owners, or it was included in some sort of training that the fire department does on certain nights of the week. Can we get like a clear answer to?
Yes, all the above.
Perfect.
Well, we have residents that, if they're close along their sidewalk or something, they'll clear those for us. The ones along Saginaw, when we do the sidewalks, we clear those. And then in the past, the fire department on their Wednesday training days after a snowstorm have done that. We haven't had a Wednesday since we've had all the snow, so we had a couple out there that were brought up. We went and checked at them. Most of those are, we've had issues like Jerry mentioned with, I call them the snow jockeys, the contractors that push across the road after we're done, that kind of stuff. As we're made aware of them, we try to clear them and make sure there's not an issue, or if the fire department has an issue. Because during the day, we can be out there with a piece of equipment and have it opened up in a matter of minutes. If it's after hours, we try to address it, same thing, we get someone in there within a half hour and get it opened up, or they can there's hydrants are usually about 300 feet apart, so they can get to one pretty accessible without any kind of issue.
Gotcha. But so the rule of thumb is if it's on your property, you're responsible for clearing it. And then if it's in a public property, the DPW and fire department kind of work together on getting those things taken care of.
It's not, the homeowner doesn't necessarily have to do it. I mean, if it turns into an issue, we can take care of it, an elderly person, or we can hydrant. But most of the time, if they're along our roadways, when we do that sidewalk system, like I said, by the Saginaw or along Grand County, where we take care of that sidewalk, and down we do certain sidewalks on Elm, different areas. If there's a hydrant that needs to be addressed, we address it.
And we shoot for 3 foot all the way around.
Yeah, that's what that was part of the discussion. 2 foot or 3 foot. I guess if at least you do 2, it's better than no feet. So, gotcha. Right on. Thanks, guys.
Ms. I?
I feel unsettled and have questions regarding the abrupt resignation of our village president. I wish he would have been here today to help ease our frustrations or what's going on. I tried to reach out to him. He has not replied. I understand with his father-in-law's illness and other duties. I just would like to know if there was something else that occurred, or if there's anything that we could have helped him to proceed in his duties until it expired. Also, I have concerns regarding John Love's and Tony's appointments and Margaret's appointment to the Planning Commission. I'd like to have more of an explanation and clarification as to why these appointments were mishandled, or what happened, and how it didn't follow ordinary procedure if it didn't. There's just a lot of unanswered questions, and I feel uneasy about all of that situation. I don't know how we can get answers to that, but I want to look further into what's happened.
Mr. Shield?
Just want to say thank you to DPW for all your hard work last few days with all the snow we had. You guys did a fabulous job. Keep trying to keep up. You guys are much appreciated.
Mr. Rankin?
I have nothing further.
Mr. Olson?
Oh, I feel the same way Suzanne does about John Love. I'm not one of his favorite people, but I thought he was doing a good job, and I don't have any idea why he was let go. And I thought that 5 of us or 4 of us voted for Tony, and I'm not sticking up. It could be Tom, Dick, or Harry. I can't understand how the council voted him in, and we had to get rid of him. I'm not sticking up for anybody. I don't know why we would vote him in and then not have him have a choice or a chance. And I can't imagine why we get rid of John Love because nobody wanted to do the plan, that historic district. Nobody had any interest in it a couple of years ago. I think he's intelligent, he'll do a good job at it, and I can't understand why we got rid of him. Yeah, I'm not sticking up for you, Mr. Love, I'm just saying I know that you're,
I appreciate you commenting.
and I thought you could do a good job, that's why we appointed you, and I don't know why you're gone, and I don't know why we did that to Tony, and I'm not friends with Tony really, or you guys. I just want to know why we voted for him, and we had to let him go.
Well, I think the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's my understanding that the reason that Tony was not continuing on was because of his withdrawal. That was the reason why it didn't go forward, is my understanding.
My understanding was I talked to Tony, and Tony said he was going to withdraw because of all the stuff going on. Am I right or wrong, sir? Right. And that was before he even told us he was going to withdraw. And he mentioned a lawsuit with the village, and I told him to come to the council, did I not, sir? And talk to the council. And Mr. Love had called me, and he said he wasn't, that's why I haven't signed that form tonight, because I was uncomfortable, Debbie. Sign that form to get rid of John Love, because I thought he was doing a good job on the committee, and maybe you've done something wrong that I don't know, Mr. Love.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Let me clarify. This form is not to get rid of anybody.
I know that.
That's just a thank you letter for their service of what they've done. And again, it's my understanding that Mr. Love's term was up on the historical district, and that there were some issues of his behavior.
I wish I would have knew them issues. I wish it would have been brought out on the council so we know what happened.
So really, any purported issues had nothing to do with, he was not removed for cause. His term expired in September of 2017, and so upon expiration of his term, the village president had the option of appointing somebody else.
But now the village president's gone, and wouldn't Debbie be in charge of what goes on now here, Jerry?
No, because that request by the village president was when he was still in office, and the citizen participation form was received from the applicant, and that's why it was placed on the agenda tonight.
Okay. I mean, I just wanted an
Sure.
explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And how about the explanation of Tony about us voting for him 2 weeks ago, and it didn't mean nothing. I mean, just to explain, I don't know, Mr. Walker.
Well, so that was again a decision by the former president, where he had not contacted Mrs. Hayhall. And while Mr. Engelberg talked about it, and he is correct, it is not a requirement that village president or anybody contact somebody whose term expired to see whether they wish to remain on or not. That was something that the president asked, that the swearing in not continue on until he had a chance to contact Mrs. Hayhall. And I think in the correspondence that she provided to the council tonight, that was at your place, she stated that she was never contacted.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the last public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. Do we have any public comment? Yes.
It's too tall. Lisa Clark, 602 South Broad. I just wanted to briefly say I'm very sorry to see Mr. Perkins go. I very much enjoyed working with him on the DDA Board of Directors. And like Suzanne, I wish there was something we could do to help out so that he could stay. He was a good guy and good to work with. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Love.
Thank you. I talked personally to Perkins about this situation, and he told me that it was a surprise to him when he saw it on the agenda that was prepared by Mr. Walker. That was what happened, and he was upset about it. And I don't want to accept anything else except that's what happened. He did not authorize my removal from this board, period. And it's unconscionable to have this kind of behavior by your manager. You can ask, if you want to talk to Perkins, you don't believe him, you believe Mr. Walker, fine. I believe Mr. Perkins.
Your term expired in September, correct?
My term could have been continued. It's not like the DDA where you stay there forever. The DDA, they're supposed to change every year to expire, but they don't bother with that because that's just the state law. So they get the attorney to gloss it over and say that's how it works. So the same thing could have taken place here. This term expiration is, I could have been replaced and put back on. So it was not done, and he didn't authorize this. He did not authorize this. It's real simple. And if you don't believe me and you don't believe him, then believe what Mr. Walker says. Somebody's lying, and I'm not one of them. I'll say that. I'll say that. And it's unacceptable.
Mr. Love?
What?
Anyone else?
Which one?
Remember the...
I'm all done.
Okay.
I was leaving.
Well,
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Please do your job.
I do. Thank you. Mr. Engelberg?
Save what's left of my voice here and be extremely calm. I can play, to answer your question, I can play the voicemail that I have. I don't know if I can get it on speakerphone, from January 24th, when Mr. Perkins called me, left me a voicemail telling me that he had spoken to Margaret and to go and get sworn in. I can...
Put it up to the mic.
Can't hear it.
All right, let me...
To the microphone.
All right, let me...
Put the earpiece up to the microphone.
Whoop. Hold on.
Harry, Tony, Jim Perkins. Sorry it took so long going. I know tonight Margaret's going to be sitting at the meeting, but you can go in tomorrow and get sworn in. I just took care of that. Thanks, bud.
You couldn't hear?
No, not really.
He said basically, I took care of it, go get sworn.
Yeah, he said Margaret was going to be seated at the January meeting, because it was on the 24th, and it was taken care of and to go get sworn in. On the 25th, I called the village office. I attempted to do so and was again stonewalled, saying that basically it got into a he said, she said thing. But the bottom line is the village president, who appointed me, and you guys who voted, directed me and directed the village administration to swear me in, and the village administration refused to do so. And that, my friends, is a complete violation of the charter. All of this stuff about being polite and notifying people and all that, that's all well and good. That had nothing to do with me. That had nothing to do with the procedure that the charter outlined. And what happened here is wrong, and that's why, quite frankly, I don't want to have anything else to do with the village anytime soon until we get a complete change in philosophy and a complete change in direction, because you guys just make rules up as you go along, and that's not the way government is supposed to work.
Thank you, Mr. Engelberg. Anyone else? Marta?
Marta, 115 South Saginaw Street. On January 9th, I spoke for 27 of 35 businesses in the historic district, requesting some input on street closures. On January 23rd, we were denied by council any voice, and we were given a few reasons that evening. I was able to be here that night, so I heard the explanation from Jerry Walker. So this evening, what we're asking is that we be notified of all events in the historic district, We're also asking that we be notified a minimum of 60 days, if at all possible, of any street closure in the historic district. We need to be able to notify our customers if there is a change in the program, if the streets are being closed down. We need to let them know. On January 23rd, I had a customer leave me a message saying that she would like to come in and look at some clothing, and she wanted to come in that week, and she actually asked me in this message if I could inform her of any street closures that she would need to be notified of so she could accommodate her schedule. So this is why it's so important. So I hope that council will please put in that when the event packet, I believe it's, you have to, when an individual comes to you and asks you for a street closure or for an event in the downtown, they have to be required about, like, I believe it is a minimum of 60 days before their event. So I believe that would give you enough time to notify the merchants. We'll be happy to give you a list of our email addresses so you can contact us. But it's definitely necessary. We've been waiting for some time. So I hope you will accept that and be able to notify us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Tim Smith, 14525 North Holly Road. I would like to work on the Riverfest thing with you, Chris, and get that going. It's been a project in my heart for 30 years here in this community, so that's good to see that up and going. The other thing that's I wanted to say and forgot to say earlier is I read a scientific bulletin today, or this week, that they found that mushroom spores, a certain type of mushroom spores, heals concrete. Believe it or not, the spores, when mixed in concrete, and then when water hits them, grow in the cracks, but they form a calcium and bicarbonate of calcium skeleton that seals the concrete right back up. Now that blew my mind. But if they're on track with this, then the whole cycle of planning these roads is get away from the asphalt. Get into something that concrete, something that can last longer, and then it'll be putting in an underground that'll last you 100 years. You might get out of this in 50. You know, kind of like we built all the infrastructure back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and then let it go to hell. I mean, just barely maintained it. Now we're in a bad situation. The whole country is. And there are new products coming out there. There are people trying to solve this. I really hope that we can stay on top of this, because $50 million is hard for this community to absorb. I don't know what else to say on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Potts?
Richard Putz, 1214 Bay Court. I have experience with people appointed to commission from where I came from before. And generally what happens that we did was the night that a person was voted in, somebody was here with the form for them to sign and take the oath of office. So I'd wish you could consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Cullis?
Yes, two things. As Marta was speaking, I remember that meeting that she was talking about on January 23rd, and it seems to me that I remembered that the council had said in the future, when people request for street closures, they weren't going to be done in consent agenda. They were going to be brought down and discussed. I seem to remember that. I'm looking at items number 17 and 18, and I believe those involve street closures. There is an additional paperwork here with it, but they're on that consent agenda. The vault wedding ceremonies and the Holly Little League parade. And it seemed to me that's what I remembered was said, that those things were going to be brought down and discussed. So I just wanted to point that out. The other reason I came up was to invite everybody Thursday night for the Holly area, or the State of the Holly Area Community. It will be here in Carl Richter. I understand you're going to be joining us on stage, along with Superintendent Noose. and we'll talk about the things that have been going on in Holly and those things that are in our future. The Holly High School Band and the choir has agreed to join us so that it's a little more entertaining than what you and I might make it. And everybody should have a good time. We look forward to seeing a lot of people there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if I may, just for clarification, from that prior meeting, it was any streets that were going to be closed that were submitted less than 60 days. If they were over 60 days, they would be in consent. If they were less than 60 days, then they would be under new business for consideration, so that they would be flagged in that manner.
And it shows the street closure is for Battle Alley only, not Saginaw.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we will call this meeting adjourned at 8:33 p.m. Thank you.